Hi, Shravanth. How are you? Nice to meet you today. Looking forward to our conversation about your technology and what you're doing to help consumers and merchants buy the things they want online.
All my pleasure, Karen, and thanks for hosting me. And my pleasure to be sharing some knowledge on our experience.
So, you provide the platform that enables the shopper, the consumer, to have a more immersive experience when they're contemplating purchases online. I've been to the site, I see how it works. And I probably used it on a number of different sites myself. You are able to turn an object, see its dimensions, get a sense of its perspective, and actually see it placed in the room. What specifically, though, is the problem you're helping merchants overcome? Is it a buying problem, or is it I don't have to return this because I can already see how it looks in my home problem, which are obviously two sides of the same coin?
Yep, very good question, Karen. I'd say the best way to think about us would be pre-purchase discovery experience for commerce, in the sense that today there's a significant gap between how online commerce works versus how you experience commerce in a physical store.
Mhm.
And what we're trying to do is bridge the gap between the flat 2D experience that online stores today provide and bring in the contextuality of the final consumer equation, which is how does this couch, say, for a furniture use case, look in my living space, right? And so the emotional connect that we're truly hitting with the consumer is helping them make better purchase decisions at the convenience of their home, and in the process bring in the depth and the spatial depth to the experience, in the sense that, like you rightly alluded to, we could drop a product, perhaps multiple products together, rotate them, position them, look at the look at fit of the product in your own environment. Like, for example, a combination look of a living space with virtual products from a marketplace being added to your own home's living space, right? And thereby helping consumers to truly evaluate the end objective, which is how does my living space look? And in the process, give them further confidence on making the purchase. And thereby, what we're seeing, Karen, is significant engagement time go up, in the sense that consumers are today looking at Canva as a home experience, a home page, and then discovering various different products within Canva, right, in the context of their own home. Equally, what we're seeing is conversion rates go up, in the sense that given we are helping consumers make better purchase decisions, there's a direct correlation to our 3D AR experience, which is, say, drop a refrigerator into your own kitchen, discover product features, in the sense that open the refrigerator door, look at storage features, look at cooling features within, and then be able to make the right purchase decision, right? So we're seeing 3 times sales uplift happen the moment we replace a 2D listing, which is the carousel of images that you see today, into a 3D enabled shopping experience. And this is across various different marketplaces that we're live with today. So I'm happy that you've experienced us in one of those.
The reason I ask about returns, I mean, clearly it does help in the purchase decision. But the reason that I ask about returns is that, perspective is often very hard to get online in a static environment. Even though the dimensions are presented and you can do the measuring and you can sort of imagine what it might look like, it's still very hard to know that until it shows up, whether that's the refrigerator, the couch, the table, the lamp. And so the question about, are you helping the sale or are you reducing returns, is also relevant, because these things are expensive to ship. And if it doesn't look right and the consumer says, nah, I think this thing needs to go, that's obviously a big expense for the retailer.
That is right, Karen. You hit the problem spot on, in the sense that, think of large appliances or furniture as a commerce category. Would my dishwasher fit within the space that I have, or would the refrigerator doors have enough space to open up, or say a cabinet, right? Do I have space for the cabinet doors to open in my hallway? These are important fit questions, right? And we encounter them across all categories of where we're making this impact today. And I think the answer to the question is today we're trying to drive sales uplift because we're seeing a significant uplift in it while we shift the 2D experience to 3D. But there is an obvious impact in terms of return rates because if you're choosing a product after evaluating both look and fit, the likely return rates for that category would go down. At this point, I don't have a measured data point to give you. This is something that we're certainly watching. It's early days and we'll get probably a lot more data to talk about. But today, to your question, we're focused on the proposition being sales up.
Mm-hmm. And obviously in those categories where it was predominantly an in-store purchase, when you're looking at, home furnishings, appliances and things like that, it typically is more difficult to do that online. People tend to go to the furniture store or the appliance store and do their own looking. But clearly the last couple of years have made that more challenging for consumers and for retailers as well. Has the last couple of years really driven a different perspective on the business and a different adoption rate by retailers of your technology?
Yep, Karen, you probably heard the tailwinds quite well in the sense that what we saw was COVID, made physical literally go into tunnels where they couldn't operate.
Mm-hmm.
So digital transformation as a strategy became paramount for pretty much every business, physical or digital. The digital folks, double dipped on the contribution and the penetration uplift that you've seen across markets. And the physical businesses have been focused on increasing their digital penetration just to bring stability to business as we go through these different waves of tunnels. So we did see a significant jump in terms of the focus in digital transformation across pretty much all clients. And that is where we saw the initial work that we were doing was primarily digital commerce players where we were doing A/B tests of 2D images versus how Avatar looks at path to purchase. But what we saw was physical businesses equally came in, predominantly retail businesses which had a lot of storefronts now trying to shift a penetration, a contribution of revenues into digital, right? So we saw a lot of adoption across both physical and digital businesses. And equally, what we saw was a lot of overlap in terms of digitally influenced physical and physically influenced digital as well, right? In the sense that at some level, our technology does bring in the dynamism of the reality, which is the storefront, and the digital overlay on it. Equally, taking the entire experience to the consumer home is what we could do at the digital side. So we've seen interest from both sides, and today we are innovating a lot in consumer journeys and reimagining how a consumer shops in a physical storefront with digital overlays onto the physical shared storefront. Equally, we're thinking about how do we help a consumer manipulate and augment their consumer reality, which is their living space or their kitchen space or say their bedroom space, and be able to bring all those products that are relevant in a combination approach into their home, right? So those are the two opportunities I would say that we've seen significantly have a tailwind post-COVID for the reasons that you rightly guessed.
It's almost as if you're giving consumers the tools to be their own interior designers, because that is what, that is the tools of their trade. They're able to look at your environment and then present boards of how different things look, and technology is enabling, I guess, democratizing that kind of capability to consumers that are looking to do that and assemble different products in their own environment.
That is so right, Karen. If you were to look at it, we're probably surpassing the physical experience, not just the 2D digital experience, in the sense that while we're shifting 2D to 3D, we are also helping the consumers avoid the cognitive load that happens in a physical store of looking at a furniture and then imagining how it would look in their home, right? We're instead showing them the end result. So I actually believe that we're probably surpassing all possible status quo journeys today with this advancement of technology, like you rightly guessed.
Making everyone's homes look better. I mean, that's a goal. that's a worthwhile ambition. Let me ask you about the technology itself. There seems to be a lot of variations on this theme in the market today. how should retailers, merchants evaluate the technology? What are some of the things they should be looking at when they're making the decision about integrating something like this into their environment?
That's such a relevant question, Karen. But maybe I'll give you a little bit on what's really important to drive sales uplift, right? Because from a merchant perspective, what really matters is the ROI in terms of transaction uplift
Mhm.
by, upgrading the 2D product catalog into life-size 3D and helping those products reach consumer homes virtually and then help the purchase decision thereafter. So the key KPI they should focus on is transaction uplift. And in our journey today we're working with large enterprise players who together account for about 750 billion of GMV,
Yeah.
which is about 7% of the total 12 trillion digital retail market. And in that market access, what we're seeing is photorealism becomes very, very important for transaction uplift in the sense that we see a correlation of the virtual render being photorealistic to the consumer confidence in terms of making the purchase decision and
Right.
thereby higher purchases thereafter. Equally, what we've seen is every second of loading time has a percentage of consumers dropping off. So you have funnel losses even before the experience loads. And so you've got to think of responsive photorealism. And I think that is the crux that we've discovered are the two pillar stones for a commerce consumer. And this is very different to the gamification AR companies you would have seen because that's a very different use case, right?
Right.
It's not a purchase decision, it's more about experience.
Mhm.
And so the difference between what you see in the world to a commerce context and driving transaction uplift is to get these two right. So today I'm proud to tell you, Karen, that we've spent about 7 years of R&D and have about 20 plus patents focused on these two pillar stones, which is photorealism, how how you can get the lighting, the surface rendering, the materials, leather versus denim, and those details right. Equally, how do you make compression happen so that loading time wise it's almost apples to apple with the 2D format. And that's the combination I would say a merchant should look at when they're evaluating tech.
What's the typical starting point when merchants say, all right, this sounds great. I want to try it. Do they pick certain items from the product catalog? What is and how long does it take to do that? Is this implementation several weeks, several months, a year? I guess it depends on the size of the product catalog. That's probably part of the answer. But maybe talk me through the process.
Right, Karen. We've kind of simplified this down to see for us, time to value is very important because for commerce marketplaces, scale is what matters.
Mhm.
And so, the real problem is photorealism at scale. Historically, the problem, Karen, to your problem was Hollywood CAD CAM style manual creation of assets, which
Mhm.
took weeks sometimes.
Yep.
And the challenge at scale was inconsistency, right? Because it depends on the skill of the 3D artist, perhaps at some level. What we've kind of done is come up with an end-to-end pipeline, which starts from the 2D images of a catalog that already exist.
Mhm.
We have something called Supernova, which is an end-to-end process platform that focuses on the supply challenges. Our consumers are merchandising teams in our marketplaces, as well as anyone who's involved in the creator economy aspect of that 2D to 3D shift. Now, Supernova is effectively a platform that helps convert these 2D images into a life-size 3D model. And equally, what we have is something called Orion, which is tightly coupled with Supernova and is the end user rendering platform. This goes and embeds upfront into our client front ends, which is their websites or their apps,
Mhm.
and it replaces the X by Y image real estate with a 3D ready, renderer. And thereby what we do is once the camera opens, help the client, help the end consumer drop the product into their own home. And the analytics and the behavior that happens within camera is something that we provide back to the marketplaces as a dashboard.
Got it.
And so in the process, what we've done is we've tightly coupled the demand and supply problems that used to exist yesterday and given marketplaces an ability to literally take their existing product listing, which has the 2D images, and go from there on to a 3D ready catalog within 4 hours.
4 hours.
That is right. Yeah. So there's, what we've kind of done is done a lot of, standardization in terms of AI and computer vision that allows for a
Wow.
90% of this manual process to be eliminated. In certain cases, like opening the refrigerator door, we may need a manual intervention, but a large problem of the surface rendering, detecting it from the image, being able to, create an asset catalog of different wood types, different fabric types, for example, various different surfaces, glass, shiny surfaces, for example, and eliminate a lot of work that used to be done SKU by SKU by standardizing this through an automated approach.
That's amazing.
That's a proposition that we bring to the table.
That's amazing. I mean, have you heard from merchants that this 3D rendering and immersive experience helps them move products that just didn't sell before because there was so much uncertainty about, dimension or look or fit? I mean, you can imagine where this is just helpful in visualizing, just about anything that someone is contemplating a major purchase for their home, as you mentioned. But I'm just curious about some of the things that perhaps linger in the product category that aren't bad products, but are perhaps considered higher risk for consumers to buy for one reason or another.
That's right. And from a consumer pull perspective, what we've seen so far is it's still early days. Let me tell you the categories we're live in today. We're doing furniture, which is home improvement. Think of
Yep.
that. Equally within home improvement, there's a kitchen space which brings in all the white goods and the large appliances. Think of dishwashers to washing machines to refrigerators to perhaps a mixer grinder. Equally home office, which is all electronics, smartphones, laptops, and so on. And bedroom spaces, right? Think of blinds to beds to cabinets and so on. So home improvement in general, post-COVID, has taken a lot of focus. The reason I think it's happening is these are usually higher selling price products. So there's a lot more ROI that we're able to deliver in these. So there's this natural segmentation of merchants saying, let's first enable these products because there's a lot more ROI. Equally, what I see is consumers in higher ASP want a pre-purchase discovery that's more informed. And thereby the current digital experience doesn't suffice for it, right? So they're also saying, I want AR. Just to give you a sense, Deloitte did a recent research in US today has about 100 million AR shoppers. Shoppers who are dropping products into their own home. 94% of it, Karen, say of that 100 million say, I want AR for my next purchase. So, the first time they get experience of this way of shopping, they're literally a recurring AR consumer thereafter. And that is the consumer pull, if you will. So from a category perspective, I would say visualization of look and fit. So think of fashion. We're live in fashion accessories today, where we let you try on a product on your face, for example, or a jewelry use case or a sunglass, caps. Equally, we're doing right now A/B tests on apparel. I would say that we still haven't cracked the ROI uplift yet in apparel. So I wouldn't claim we've done the journey. We do have tech today to be able to create human avatars, drape apparel onto it, but we still haven't seen a solid proposition in terms of sales uplift happening. In some cases, we're seeing, that needs more innovation and iteration. But everything else, which I call as rigid problems, think of any rigid object and visual discovery of those, from fashion accessories to consumer goods to furniture. Like I said, we are seeing significant consumer pull across, marketplaces and geographies, I would say.
Yeah, I think everywhere where perspective is really relevant to the decision. It's hard. We talk about home furnishings and things like that. I mean, that seems obvious, but accessories, jewelry, you don't really get a sense of perspective when you're just looking at the item as the item, even when you're looking at it as a close-up. It's hard to know what it looks like on a person, given where they want to wear it or what the dimensions of the product are. I think people have a lot of trouble with perspective buying online.
That is right. Yeah. And I think it's also the fact that at a consumer psychology level, 60% of our sensory perception is visual. So we all perceive the world with a depth in it. And so there is a significant difference in terms of the experience today that the 2D digital world offers in Web 2.0 to hopefully where Web 3.0 is going, which is consumer being the protagonist of everything, from payments, to honestly experience itself, which is where we're playing the role. Bring the digital world to the consumer context rather
Mhm.
than the other way around, where the consumer has to go to a web page in the digital world, right? So I think there's a significant upgrade in the consumer experience itself happening with this underlying 2D to 3D shift, like
You're
what
not,
we.
you're not going to tell me that I'm going to be doing this in the metaverse, are you? Like, don't tell me that.
No, I think, I don't believe that we will all live in a virtual world, right?
That's
If
good.
that's the question that you're asking.
That's good.
But I do think that there's a lot of power in terms of manipulating shared physical
Mhm.
reality, right? In the sense that overlaying digital information on top of consumer reality or being able to manipulate consumer reality. Let me give you a context of what we are doing, right? We call our platform contextual reality. And
Mhm.
the reason is we're also thinking about how to help, say, a consumer move a physical couch to the left, drop, say, a virtual couch in its place, and then look at the renovated look without any physical effort. And there's a lot of value in it, right? In fact, what if I could save that configuration and then the next time my wife's back, show it to her saying, "Do you like this? Look," or be able to share it digitally where
Mhm.
she's able to see the entire edition. So I think there's a lot of utilitarian value that we can
Yep.
discover, which is where we are focused on. We don't not strong believers of the novelty value that people are ascribing to metaverse, but we
Yeah.
do think that the underlying 2D to 3D shift.
Yep.
For example, let me talk about Apple's strategy, right? They're talking about a smart glass where
Mhm.
you're honestly augmenting reality. And that's very powerful. Think of maps. If I'm driving a car, being able to see exactly where to turn, in the physical reality, or for example me being able to start manipulating, say, a sticky on my refrigerator which I leave behind, which only my wife can see the next time she comes back, right? So this has utilitarian value without the destruction that materialism causes.
Yeah.
And to be able to do, why do you need a television anymore if you could drop any screen size you want and keep it persistent overlaid on your screen, for anyone who's wearing an Apple smart glass would be able to see it. And that's where I see the power to be, Karen. I hope I'm answering your question.
Yeah. Yeah. No, no, it has to solve a problem that consumers feel that they have. Or create, I mean, obviously in doing that, it creates a better experience for the consumer, but it all starts with a problem that the creative application of technology can solve for a consumer, and then ultimately the business that is trying to reach them to complete a transaction of some kind. So I do agree with you. What does the technology have to do in order to evolve to become this more contextual overlay to the environment in which consumers operate today?
Yeah, there are two answers to this. One is hardware, and the other is the
Of
software
course,
aspect.
right.
And in terms of hardware, I call this as a 2.5D device, in the sense that while this has 6 degrees of freedom in terms of being able to drop a life-size 3D couch in your space, it still is a flat screen,
Hmm.
Karen. And the experience is mixed between a flat 2D screen and the 6 degrees of freedom in terms of the product. What I think will happen in the next decade is a shift from the computing device being a flat device to some sort of a wearable. You would have seen Apple's announcement where they're talking about an untethered compute smart glass, which does calls on it. So it's an always on device. And I'm waiting for that moment where there's an always on life size 3D visual discovery device coming through. Because I think at that point, honestly, the trillions of dollars of videos and images that are all flat will
Hmm.
need to evolve into life-size dimensions. I'm not saying we'll start living in a virtual world, but we will certainly start engaging with the 3D digital world, and that will be accessible to you in your physical reality because it's
Right.
like you said, perspective-wise dropped into your
Hmm.
reality.
So the paradigm is shifted so that the objects that you see that are flat today with hardware and software, as you describe, can become this contextual experience without having to manipulate all those images. It's very, very interesting.
That's right.
Is that a 3-year evolution? Is that an end of decade evolution? How far away are we from something like that?
I think it's probably 5 years from now where there's a device which is truly solved and iterated towards the user experience that works. I think there'll be a couple of iterations required to
Mhm.
get to a truly penetratable device. But Karen, my belief is, I saw the mobile evolution very closely. I was part of Windows Mobile, for example, at Microsoft before iPhone came through. And what I saw was, the reason why mobile worked was it adds superhuman
Yep,
capabilities to
yep,
human habit.
yep.
It's knowledge at your fingertips.
Mhm.
And so a Shravant with a phone is much more powerful than a Shravant without one. And that's the reason why I have no option as a human to adopt the technology, right? To improve and be better tomorrow. And I think this device that Apple's, for example, talking about, which allows you to start manipulating. Imagine me being a salesman in a room, seeing LinkedIn bios of everyone in the room, so that I don't have to remember the first name. I'm literally seeing it right behind the face. And no one else gets to know it, right? That's a superhuman sales ability. And in those, I think we will start finding utility value, and we will start, eliminating the friction in how we're doing things today. And I think that's how this will take off. And therefore, I do think a decade from now, I won't be carrying a flat device. To answer your question, I would probably wearing, most of us would probably be wearing a wearable, which is literally superimposing the digital world into the physical world.
Just like the movies. Just like
Well,
the movies.
Star Trek
It's it's
probably
it's
visualized a model
yeah,
before
no.
we did.
I think I think your point about it becomes not only contextual, but it becomes very much always available wherever we go. I mean, the mobile phone is always available wherever we go. We take it with us. But what you're talking about is really more of an ambient experience where it's just always on. And the degree to which the context is amplified is to a very different dimension and with a very different perspective. Well, Siobhan, thanks so much for your perspective on this. I can't wait to see it evolve, and thanks for sharing your great insights. I enjoyed the conversation. Thanks again.
All my pleasure, Karen. Much appreciated.
Bye bye now.